Hey everyone, this is Jesse from the Janjo Zone, and I recently reached a goal for my Patreon. It's a simple $10 a month kind of thing for a Q&A video, so that's what we're gonna do today, so let's get started. Want to support Janjo? Get your name in videos or request content for the channel? Then check out my Patreon for exclusive perks, content, and stretch goals. Alright, so Buki on Twitter asks, what OST do you use for the videos? I use a bunch of different music. It's not ever one specific one, at least in terms of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. I do use the OST for Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories. That one you probably see in a lot of them, at least the like the free duel, like the duel and kind of stuff. Name entry is usually the one I have, like the beginning of my history videos. I also use some OC remix stuff. That's like the Dual Sauce theme, you could say, from Dark Duel Stories, and again, other Forbidden Memories remixes. I use some of that. I also have this like Vaporwave mix I use, just found some really long one that I tend to use for my videos now for like the bulk of it. Just so I can have something I can slap it in. I have a whole music folder specifically for videos. That way I don't have to continuously look for every video for like, all right, what fits this? Should I use this music? I kind of have a general idea of what to slap onto my videos, and I will also know what volumes to set for them pretty consistently so I can pump videos out as I do for my channel. So that's one thing I do. Let's see, I do have some other songs. I'm trying to remember what the game was. It's from like the Switch one. I think it's Link Evolution. I think I use from Legacy of the Duelist. Yeah, Legacy of the Duelist. Okay, I use music from that. Occasionally, I don't really use it anymore, but Eternal Duelist Soul music. I don't really use that anymore though. It's mostly has been Forbidden Memories, Legacy of the Duelist, a couple of OC remix stuff, which is a great website for any sort of remixes, or like vaporwavy kind of stuff, just like nice mellow background music. That's the kind of stuff I like to do for it. Makes it consistent with like a thematic, so when you have a video out, when you're editing, when someone's watching a video, they'll kind of know the start of a video with the music, and then the end of the video with a specific music. You know, when you watch my Dual Sauce history videos, you'll hear like that theme kind of play at the end, so you know that, all right, the video's wrapping up. So it's a good way to kind of lead the viewer along with the video. But yeah, those are the OSTs I use. All right, going on to my YouTube comments. Buki also asks, what's your fave Yu-Gi-Oh format? My favorite Yu-Gi-Oh format, man, that's kind of a hard one, because like I love the retro formats so much, and there's so many that I haven't even like jumped into that I feel like I would love. But if you notice on my channel, just going off of that, I tend to make GOAT format and 2002 Yu-Gi Kaiba format videos, and there's a reason for this. You know, GOAT format, that is the height of retro Yu-Gi-Oh! It's where everything feels fair enough in terms of the ban list, in terms of the viable cards. There's so many decks and so many, there is a lot of cards in GOAT format. You may look at modern formats and think, well, there's no cards back then. That's not true. There's a ton of cards, a ton of decks, whether it's, you know, GOAT Control, Chaos, Warrior Toolbox, Reasoning Gate, Clown Control, various sorts of water decks, Mega Rock OTK, Empty Jar, Bazoo Return. Like, there's so many decks, and that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to GOAT format. So there's so much fun to have with it, and it is very nostalgic, and it's fun because, well, that's the retro format that everyone plays. It's nice to have a format that's like that, that people will go and play more than other formats, more than 2002 stuff or like Edison, so on, so on. But 2002 is also, the Yu-Gi Kaiba specifically, people could kind of call 2002 format, even though obviously there's like Critter format and other formats that no one really plays, like Spell Ruler, but that's just, you know, kind of something for me. Yu-Gi Kaiba is very fun, because it is the first like real format. I know there was the Legend of Blue Eyes format before, but this is the first format with some sort of list that's more than one set and has actual good cards to make decks with that feel more like a deck than LOB does. With Yugi and Kaiba, it is very simple. That's what I like about it. It's very simple. So when you want to be creative with it, you really have to kind of think outside the box. And that's why a lot of decks are kind of named different, even though it might be like a 1 or 2 card difference in some of these decks. But it's very, like, you know what your opponent's probably gonna play. So it's a very mental game. Very, very resource heavy in that regard. There's also plenty of luck involved in the format in terms of drawing stuff. But the fact is that, like, everything's so similar, but you can still have your own kind of spice with it. I really like, and just to have a format that was from like the very first time a lot of us played Yu-Gi-Oh! Is crazy. I recall when I first saw the Fiend Beating deck on Sam Cox's channel, I thought that was so cool. To have a deck that uses Ryukushin Powered and Baron of the Fiend Sword, the monster card that I won my very first duel with all the way back in 2002 in must have been June or July of 2002, and that just like kind of blew me away. And there's like other decks. There's like Metal Dragon Turbo. I know it's not very good. You know, the Beatdown, Defense, Exodia decks, Dragon decks, my Umi Beatdown deck, and like other decks that you probably wouldn't think exist just going into the format. And that's what I really like about it. So when it comes to my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh format, like, it's mixed between those two. And don't get me wrong, I love plenty of formats in Yu-Gi-Oh. I've been kind of delving into a bit more of critter formats. I want to do more stuff on like android formats and like vampire format and even later formats. You know, like I played modern for quite a while, and I really love like Xyz and Link monsters personally. Synchros I don't really care too much about. Pendulums, but I like Cliff Forts. But yeah, I like a lot of formats of Yu-Gi-Oh! They all have something to offer, and they're all really unique. And as I kind of talk about and learn for myself more formats of Yu-Gi-Oh, you know, it might change, but I gotta go with GOAT and Yugi Kaiba format for my favorite format. It's a tie, what can I say? Alright, Guy Person, great name, Guy Person, Buddy Man, asks, what's your deck building process? Well, so I go kind of sort of different routes about it, but they all kind of, it's more like a checklist, I guess you could say. So when I think about a deck, okay, it's initially usually involving around one idea. It isn't like, I'm going to make a meta-breaking deck. I'm not going to make a deck that's going to be like anti-meta. It's usually, I think of like a card, typically, at least in terms of my like Janjo's deck builder series. So I think of a card like Infernal Flame Emperor. You know, when I made my Fire Return deck, and I think, okay, well, how can I make this one card work? What cards will work alongside it? Like in a GOAT format, you'll always kind of know what kind of cards you're going to be playing initially. Like, you do have your staple cards, things like Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, that sort of stuff. So that does fill some cards in your deck. So then you have the card you want to focus around, and you want to focus, all right, what's the strategy? How do I win with this card? What's the best way to win with the deck? With Infernal Flame Emperor, his whole thing is that you have to banish fire monsters to get him out there. He's always spell and trap cards on the field. But you're not gonna want to really focus on spell and trap cards because that's kind of crappy use for Infernal Flame Emperor really to use, because you have plenty of back row hate, and it's not like your opponent's going to be playing a ton of back row cards anyway, probably. So you go with like a beatdown deck. There's a lot of good fire beatdown cards. You go with like a fire toolbox, because there's kind of neat cards that kind of only work in toolboxy stuff, like a thing in the crater. You could use like a fire / pyro kind of thing. The main thing I saw with Flame Emperor's effect was that, well, if you're banishing all these fire monsters, you can banish up to 5 fire monsters. That's a lot of monsters. A lot of things you can get back with like a dimension fusion or a return from a different dimension. So when you look at this card, you think, all right, well, the best thing about it is that it can banish cards, things they can get out for later. It's a similar concept to like a Bazoo kind of deck, where you banish monsters, Bazoo returns, so you return them after getting some strong stuff on the field. So you want to know what's the best way to win with your deck. What's going to get you to that spot? You know, if you're having criteria, that's great too. You know, you want to meet your certain criteria. You want to meet the cards that you're probably going to definitely be playing with, and then fill out the rest with cards that get you to that, but also cards that are good too. You don't want to just be like just a dumb gimmicky deck. You still want to include good cards. Like if you're going to need a Sangan or a Breaker or a Tribe Infecting Virus, you know, just going for GOAT format, then add those cards. Don't be afraid. But if it's a big thing on synergy is the thing. You know, with water decks, yeah, you're gonna want to play Tribe Infecting Virus. You're gonna want to play Abyss Soldiers. These cards that work together to get to where you want to go. It's a team building process, really. There's many different ways. I feel like in my deck builder series, I like to go fairly in depth of how I build the deck, my logic behind a lot of the things. If I'm not going too much in detail, certainly let me know, and I'll try to, I'll reply to hopefully deepen the discussion for those. But yeah, it's all about just knowing what is the plan for the deck, like picking a card, then figuring out the plan for it, then what synergizes with it, and what staple cards that are you gonna use, which usually is like most of the staple cards. You got the Trinity, and Snatch, Premature, Heavy Storm, Mystical Space Typhoon, Mirror Force, Torrential maybe, Ring of Destruction, Call of Haunted maybe. It all depends on the kind of deck you make, but like that's a good chunk of cards. That's like a fourth of your deck right there. And then you have like 5 to 10 other staple cards that just work in any deck. And yeah, it's just a lot of synergizing and trying to get to that one goal you want to reach. Even if it's not a good goal, even if it's just like, I want to get out Vampire Genesis, then you want to synergize with that and just keep working, find ratios that are good. When I build a deck, I can definitely have builds that I like, but just feels kind of off. And sometimes you make a build and you think, oh, that's just a very solid build. Like that looks like a good build. That looks like a solid deck. It's not like every card's like a one of kind of crazy toolbox, but everything just kind of feels like it should work. I guess is the best way to go about it. I think I've rambled long enough about that, but so I hope I answered your question. All right, last question on here. Didn't get a ton of questions, so I hope I answered enough of them in detail. By Moki Doki Panic. How did you come up with your YouTube name? This is kind of a simple one. So I've had many names in the past, as people who've been subscribed to my channel for a long time probably know. But Janjo Zone. So the Janjo came up with, because I was trying to figure out a new name for my channel, one that was a bit simpler for my old one, which was Aesthetic, which I liked, but no one could say or spell. So I needed kind of a simpler name, one that really felt like it was more me. So my first name is Jesse from the Janjo Zone. And one of my favorite video games growing up was Banjo-Kazooie. I love Banjo-Kazooie. I love Banjo-Tooie. Banjo was great. So take the first letter of my first name, Jesse, and take Banjo and just kind of smush them together, and then you got Janjo. So when I YouTube searched it, there wasn't really any like big channels with that name. There was a couple like very tiny ones. So I figured, oh well, it's a good way to go about it. So that's how I picked Janjo. Now the second part of that, Janjo Zone, came from, well, I was still having issues with popping up. Like if I just Google search Janjo, I was still having issues for my channel to pop up on there. So I needed some other word to filter out my channel from just like generic searches. At the time when I had a channel manager, we were discussing for quite a while actually. It was a couple months of just kind of brainstorming different ideas I've had. I had different ideas I pitched, and then I thought, Janjo Zone, because it's kind of like a 90s thing. And at the time I was doing more Sonic content, so that was kind of fit, like Sonic zones, stages in the game. And when I pitched that idea, my manager was like, oh, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, let's go with that. So we went with it. And since I've shifted from Sonic content to Yu-Gi-Oh content. God, I shift content so often. It still kind of fits because zones are a thing in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, it's the zones on your field, monster zones, spell and trap card zones. Like, it's still an applicable term for it. So it works, you know. I've thought about changing when I went to like YouTube or when I went to Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, but nah, that's not worth it. So it's probably gonna be Janjo Zone until the end of time. But I definitely like the name. You know, sometimes in videos you can tell I say Janjo Zone or I just say Janjo, because like the primary thing is Janjo per se, but the zone is, you know, mainly just like a fluff word, kinda, more or less. But hey, I like the addition of it, so you know, no harm done. So wowee, that took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. So I hope this was a good video. Hope you all learned a thing or two, and I hope I answered questions. Again, thank you all who supported me on Patreon. I'm sure we have a lot more fun stuff ahead. I have plenty of history series already done, so it's just a matter of me putting them out varying weeks. So we'll see when that happens. So yeah, thank you all for supporting me, and until I see you all next time, have a wonderful day.
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba.